Welcome to the third episode of the Swoop podcast here from Falcon Media. Chase Bachman and I did the first two episodes during quarantine a couple of months ago before sports at Bowling Green got started. And today, Shayne Nissen, I am going to try and pick it up back up, but it's not going to be Chase with me today on the call. Instead, it's going to be some of the fantastic sports reporters and columnists that have done great work for Falcon Media so far this year. We're going to have Drew Terhall, someone who has covered the football team very closely and done stories on other sports as well. Hayden, Kincaid, who has written plenty of columns about multiple different teams. And then Reese, Lannon, who just got done covering the women's basketball game on Sunday and has written columns on a lot of other sports as well. With my host of guests, we're going to be talking about a variety of Bowling Green sports, starting with the football team and their season so far. The men's basketball team and the expectations that we have for them, as well as what we have seen so far in their three games, the hockey team's expectations and what we have seen so far, and a little bit of women's basketball as well as they kicked off their season on Sunday. So we have a jam-packed schedule at Bowling Green right now, and we're glad to have that, especially with everything we went through earlier in the year. But we're going to talk it all through here on the Swoop. And our first topic is going to be the Bowling Green football team. Bowling Green football is now 0-4 in 2020, and with a 52-10 road loss to Ohio last week, has now lost 7 in a row. Their last win was a 35-6 home win against Akron on November 2nd of last year. Their opponent this week is Akron, and both teams are going to be looking for their first win of the season. Akron comes in as 3-point favorites despite not having won a game since 2018 when they defeated Central Michigan 17-10 on October 27th of that year. For some context, as to the team this season, Akron only fell to Ohio in Week 2, 24-10. Bowling Green, obviously, as I just mentioned, fell 52-10 last week. So we're going to get started here. My first question is going to go to Drew, who has covered the last 3 games for Bowling Green football. I mean, you've watched them the last 3 weeks. I'm sure you watched a little bit of them against Toledo too, so you've really seen them all year. And I know you don't know that much about Akron, but what have you seen from them, and what do you think their chances are going in this week against Akron?
I mean, I think they have a good chance against Akron. Akron's at the same place where Bowling Green is right now. Both, don't have a win, kind of rebuilding programs. So I think they have a good shot. Obviously, they need to play better than last week. I think they took a step back from developing because you saw against Buffalo, they were able to move the ball at least. Mm-hmm. And that's probably one of the best defenses in the MAC. So as long as they can come out, Mac McDowell can kind of get more in the rhythm early, and that run game is going to be really good. I think they'll have a shot against Akron.
Yeah, and what's your take? I know it's obviously a road game. Obviously, we're not sure. I mean, road games don't really mean as much as they used to in the pandemic, but what is your take on the fact that they're 3-point or that they're 3-point underdogs going against Akron, who hasn't won a game since 2018?
It's really telling them what's happening on in the season right now.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen the box scores; they're getting blown out, and sometimes those games are close. I know they were tied with Kent after the first quarter, but other than that, I think it's just the defense hasn't been there. But I think with the struggling Akron offense, they might show up actually.
Yeah, and just kind of you kind of vaguely talked about some of the positives. What are some of the positives that you've seen on the last couple of weeks watching them?
I think the offense has progressively gotten better. You've seen Mac McDowell was only throwing for 200 yards the first 2 games. And then Buffalo came out with a 200-yard game. The receivers have been better. They were dropping balls early in the year. Now they're actually getting more caught up now. And also the offensive line wasn't that great in pass protection, but the one positive from Ohio was they did protect Matt McDowell better. It was just McDowell was making bad reads that game.
Yeah, we will see how that plays out. I know who are just kind of go through and name some specific players, Drew, that you've watched over the last couple of weeks that you've been impressed with. I know one of them I know who one of them is going to be. Just go through and just kind of name some of the 3 players that, despite obviously the 0-4 record, that you've really been impressed with and you think Bowling Green could build on going forward.
I think it's hard not to mention Terrion Stewart first.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
That's the one I said I thought you were going to mention.
Yeah, after the Kent State game in the fourth quarter, he really has shown a lot for a freshman, and he will continue to be better. And it's going to be exciting to watch him and maybe Claire get in the share the backfield together. I know he wasn't against Ohio, so hopefully he can get in against Akron. Also, Darren Anders has really impressed for filling in at that linebacker spot. He's been really good tackling machine right next to Colby Cullen. So I think he's been impressive so far too, despite how bad the run defense has been. He's been a bright spot in that defense. And the secondary too, I think as a whole, has been really impressive so far. Even though opponents against Bowling Green only had to run the ball to win the game, their pass defense has been pretty good in the secondary.
Yeah, like you said, there hasn't been a lot of testing going on there in the secondary because of how just bad the run defense has been for Bowling Green. But that was kind of a theme last year too. They had a really young secondary. We could definitely see you could definitely see a lot of talent with Jordan Anderson back there. Caleb Bigger is obviously one of them too. I mean, they have talent in the secondary. It's just they got to be able to stop the run, and if they could do that, they might be able to have some success. I mean, and the last thing I had to ask you, Drew, is just Coach Loeffler has talked a lot about the rebuilding process this season. And we knew when Loeffler got the job last year that it was going to be a rebuilding process because of the way the program was left under Mike Jinks. I mean, what is your take on the job that he is doing on his second year as far as that goes?
I think he got dealt a bad hand with how COVID shut down spring camp. Because he's talked about this a lot in the press conferences, is he needs this team to get better, stronger, hit the weight room more. And that's hard to do during a season. So I think with how many games there is, only the 6 games, is going to help him gain more game experience. And for the 4 games so far, it's been okay. I mean, they're not lighting it up. They're struggling. But you see positive like Terrion Stewart. So I think there's a lot of positives to take away that this can move forward to next year, no matter how many games they play next year. I think this team is heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I think it's going in the direction, and it's going to be hard to see that for fans. They're just watching it and see the product that gets put on the field. But, I mean, you have to kind of look at the recruiting process, how many of those kids are being kept in the program, which is something we didn't see with Jinks. I mean, that's really what you have to look at here. And like we said, it's hard to judge Loeffler off of what he's done this year. I mean, I know I talk with Drew a lot. He's covered the team pretty extensively, but I do want to talk to Reese and Hayden about the football team too. And I know Drew said a lot. We'll go to Hayden first. What is you from the outside looking in? I know you're in BGSU, we haven't really got to do any of those games for BGSU, but what has kind of just been your take from what you've seen this year from Bowling Green football and what they need to do going forward?
Well, this season, kind of with COVID shutting everything down, has kind of been a lost season per se. There wasn't a whole lot of expectations going into the season. And the fact that they're just a really young team, one of the youngest teams in Division I football right now. So for me, I feel like they just need to be working on developing and not being able to have much of an off season, as Drew said, due to COVID, kind of hampered their ability to develop and bring up the younger talent that they have. So I think just getting the game experience this year, moving into the off season, get some time in the weight room and just develop the talent they have and try and compete for a middle area of the MAC for next season is kind of the expectations I have right now.
Yeah. And yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, just like I just kind of said, I mean, it's just going to be hard for us and us from the outside to really see what projection the program's going. I mean, you can look at recruiting classes, but what it's really going to come down to, and especially at a smaller school like Bowling Green, is developing the players that we get, because we're not going to get the 5-star athletes that
right.
Ohio State gets. We're not going to get those type of athletes. It's going to come down to how well this coaching staff can develop those young players. And we're not going to see that right now. I mean, we see the talent, but especially with a COVID-shortened season, we haven't got as much practice. It's really hard to see how well those players are developing in this short season. Reese, I want to go to you before we move on to men's basketball about football. I mean, I know you're big on Twitter, you're big on Ohio State football, but what have you seen from your alma mater, not alma mater, but from your school this year?
Well, I know Scott Loeffler said he wasn't going to hit the JUCO market very hard in terms of recruiting. Mm-hmm. He wanted to build it through 4 or 5 year guys. And while that can be a good plan for the short term, it's just not going to work, not getting JUCO guys in there. Obviously, they're playing a lot of young guys on both sides of the ball. Freshmen playing on offense, on defense. Mm-hmm. So without JUCO guys to kind of come in and fill that void, they kind of just build up. So all that you can hope for is these guys get experience and they kind of turn that into positives in the coming years. And hopefully that experience helps them, because right now they're just so far behind the 8 ball in terms of not only experience, but just overall talent. Like, you can't expect true freshmen, redshirt freshmen to come in and just be major impact players. Sure, you'll have a few outliers, but you're not going to be able to create anything substantial.
Yeah, I agree. Loeffler had that press conference a couple of weeks ago where he got really heated about bringing JUCOs in. And I agree and disagree with the sense. I think there is a way to have the right mix of both. Yes. But I understand what he's getting at in saying that we're not going to build anything here. We just keep trying to keep taking JUCO players year after year after year. I think he wants to build something, and that's his plan. I think it can work. I just think it's going to be really bad.
It's going to take some time.
It's going to take a lot of time. And from what he's saying, all indications are that when they hired him, they kind of hired him with that thought in mind, that it was going to take a long time. So, I mean, most of us will probably be gone when we see, hopefully, everything come to fruition. But hopefully it does come to fruition in the next couple of years. So Bowling Green takes on Akron on Saturday. I believe that one's at 2:00 p.m. I'm not sure where you can watch that, but I'm not sure if it's on national TV this time. I'm sure it'll be on at least ESPN Plus at the very least, but we'll be looking out to see if Bowling Green can get their first win, and then they will finish up at home the Saturday after against Miami, which probably won't end up in a win, but anything could happen. But Akron's their biggest chance for a win, and that's who they're going to play this week. So now we're going to go on to men's basketball, and it's like going from dark to light with these two programs. I mean, the men's basketball program has been so good the last couple of years. Justin Turner at the helm of that, obviously. I mean, they played 3 games this season already. They've gone 2-1 with victories over South Carolina State, and then they got an overtime win against Appalachian State last night. And then, of course, they lost their opener to Michigan. Despite that loss to Michigan, the team played really well. They put up 82 points, and we know this team can score. Trey Diggs, Justin Turner, Daquan Paul, and all have a lot of scoring ability. They played, and that was against the then ranked number 25 Michigan Wolverines. They are not ranked anymore. They struggled with Oakland a couple of days ago. So, but the problem is they put up 82, but they gave up 96. And in the ensuing 2 games, the Falcons had given up 78 points to South Carolina State and 76 to Appalachian State in overtime win. So that's gone down, but I'm sure he even wants to get that down further. That was a big emphasis after the Michigan game, talking about defense and getting that going. I mean, this team is obviously going to be led by preseason player of the year, Justin Turner. He had 25 last night and was a driving force in that OT win over the Mountaineers. Hayden, what have you seen from the Falcons this year that sticks out to you?
There's kind of 2 things. The emergence of Matheny, Caden Matheny, as a freshman, that was surprising to me. He wasn't on my watch list going into the season, but obviously he was on Michael Huger's watch list, so he's been playing a lot. And then the lack of defense I've seen so far for this team is another thing that sticks out to me, but I think that's just something that needs to maybe come into its own. I don't think that it's necessarily an issue right now. I do like, obviously, Justin Turner is probably going to end up being the best player in the MAC, if not a top 3 player in the MAC. So there's that. And then Daquan Plowden is another guy that I'm looking to develop, and not necessarily develop, but become the dynamic player he can be if he continues to be as or progresses in as dynamic as he was last season, he's going to be tough to stop night in and night out in the MAC. So that's another player that I expect to kind of start to take over as we get into MAC play.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of the things on defense. I think some of that, especially in the Michigan game, was just a lack of size. I mean, that's the one thing that could give this team problems going forward, because really their only sizable person is Dylan Swingle on the inside, and he got into foul trouble early in that game, and that made them go small. I mean, at that point, you're playing Daquan Plowden at center, at that center position, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, he's playing in the 5 position there, and that's just not gonna go over well. Matisse Kulachkowski, he is another big one. He's a big guy that could play power forward, stretch 4. He's been hurt. They said that he should be coming back this month or in this month in December, hopefully. They said at the latest beginning of January. So we should get some more size there back. Bowling Green should. But I think that's the biggest thing with size. And against Michigan, they had the big 7-footer. I can't remember his name. They gave us problems. I think that was the biggest thing for the Falcons against Michigan. If Swingle doesn't get hurt early in that, or doesn't get into foul trouble, rather early in that game, I think it could be a different story. But yeah, I agree. I think, like you said, obviously Justin Turner's the one everyone talks about, and for good reason. He's an NBA prospect, but Daquan Plowden has been great. And you mentioned Caden Matheny. I really like Caden Matheny. He's made a couple of mistakes, and that's going to come as a freshman. But he's he plays very good defense. He's very intense on defense, along with Josiah Fulcher, who's also a very good defender, a freshman coming in for the Falcons. So the future looks good for Bowling Green going forward. So that has been nice to see. And Reese, I know that you've watched this team for the last couple of years now. I mean, what does this team – I mean, their goal, obviously, last year and the year before, their goal was to win a MAC championship. They haven't been to the NCAA tournament since 1968. Last year they didn't have the chance to play for a MAC championship, obviously, because the season getting canceled. I mean, what do you think this team has to do to take them over the top and win a MAC title?
Well, I actually know Caden Matheny and Jackson Watson, 2 freshmen, quite well. Okay. And the stuff they were saying before the year, they were very confident that they were the best team in the MAC. They felt like they had a lot returning. And honestly, Caden, I never really seen Caden play until the Michigan game. Didn't realize how good of a shooter he can be. He like you said, he's going to make mistakes as a freshman, but he'll make that offense. How he plays kind of dictates that offense, because if he gets it off to Diggs and Fields and all these shooters open, that can really set up the flow of the offense. Their issue, honestly, like Hayden said, is in the middle. They're a little bit soft in the middle. They don't have a ton of height. Hunter Dickinson, who's a 7-footer at Michigan, really gave them big problems. But in the MAC, you're not going to find too many extremely skilled big men. So I thought Swingle's been playing better lately. I thought Appalachian State he played a lot better than he was in the Michigan game for sure. And honestly, he doesn't need to score the ball. They need him more just to rebound the ball and play decent defense more than anything else, because I think the offense is going to put up points regardless when you have Justin Turner, who's one of the best players in the MAC, if not the best player. You have Daquan Plowden, who's a senior. He's been a starter for a couple of years, and he's been a really good scorer. Trey Diggs off the bench is an absolute sniper. They obviously have Caleb Fields off the bench and shoot as well. Ziegler's more of a slasher, kind of like a slash to the basket, score inside type player. I think they won't have problems scoring the ball. And even if they are average defensively, I still think they're the best team in the MAC, and I don't really think it's all that close. They just need to figure out how to rebound the ball. Yeah,
and I think that the defense is something that it doesn't need to be great. It just needs to be good enough for your offense to outscore every other team in the MAC, and I think they have the capability to do that every night.
We've seen teams small mid-major teams make the NCAA tournament, and they're really not great defensive teams, but they've made runs just based on how well they can shoot the ball. Look at UMBC. Look at Loyola Chicago. They made it to Final Four a couple years ago, and these teams pride themselves on offense. So at the mid-major level, it's more offense over defense.
Yeah, I agree. I think that while defense is obviously going to help us a lot, but like you said, Dylan Swingle really just needs to rebound the ball, play a little bit defense, just be that kind of force inside. Like I said earlier, he got into foul trouble early in that Michigan game, and that really hindered the Bowling Green Falcons inside, and it's something that they really have to deal with. But I agree, Reese. I think that this team, like you said, it has so many offensive weapons, and that's without Matisse Kulakowski, who was a big stretch four who can really shoot the ball as well. And when he gets back, I mean, this team is going to have so many options to go to. And they have a couple of freshmen, like you mentioned. The one thing I've noticed with Hayden or Caden Matheny, Caden Matheny, he just and especially I noticed in the Appalachian State game, he is not afraid to pull a shot from anywhere. I mean, he hit a really, really deep three right before the half in that Appalachian State game. He had a big three in the in overtime as well. But that was the only 2 threes he had in the game. But he took another couple, and he was taking them early in the shot clock, which I'm not sure that I like. But you could tell that he has confidence, and that's the biggest thing with the freshmen. There's a lot of freshmen coming in, especially to a team that's as good as this. They don't have a lot of confidence, but Hayden has had a lot of confidence coming into this season. I think that he is really has the potential to be the future of this program. So Bowling Green men's basketball, they will open up conference play actually on Sunday at 6 p.m. That'll be their next game after Stroh. They're going to look to start up early. They play against Buffalo, who, as we know, is a very, very good program of basketball. I believe they were picked 4th in the MAC this season. So look out for that. We'll have content on that on BG Falcon Media. But that was a good discussion about men's basketball. Now we're going to move over to hockey. Hockey has had limited action. They played 2 games against Adrian, a home and away series. They will play tonight against Robert Morris. That game is at, I believe it's at 7:07. The puck drops for that one. They're playing at Robert Morris. So that'd be the really first big test of the season coming up for Bowling Green hockey. In their 2-0 sweep against Adrian, they won the first game 6-2 at home at Slater Family Ice Arena, and then they won the second away at Adrian 5-0. It's going to be hard to get a gauge of how good the Falcons can be, like I said, going up against a lower division school, but it's still encouraging to see so much offense from the Falcons, something that they struggled a little bit with last year. I mean, Hayden, you did a piece on this Falcons hockey team coming into the season, and you mentioned some of the key players for the team. Just kind of run us through who some of those were and why you think they're going to be key for this season.
Yeah, so I'll hit 3 of them. I'll hit a forward, a defenseman, and then our goaltender. We'll start with Brandon Cruz, who's a senior forward. He is one of the main facilitators for this team. He is in a leadership position as an alternate captain this season. Was also an alternate captain last year, and he is kind of a player that you want to see develop more of a shot and become more of a scorer than he was a season ago. And he's in the Vegas Golden Knights pipeline, and he's definitely one of the better players for this team, if not the best player for the team. I want to see him develop more of that scoring potential, and he is only or had about a +1 plus minus from a season ago, and he's great defensively. So you want to see that become more of a +10 to 15 to kind of replace what we lost in Alec Rawhauser and a scoring threat. Another one I'm going to hit is Tim Viacherdis. He is a junior defenseman. We still get another year out of him, and he is kind of that tough, gritty defenseman you like to see on your blue line, especially out of a starting defenseman. He is it's kind of similar to Alec Rawhauser, as I like to see him become more of a not like a shooter, obviously, because he's a defenseman, but develop more of a slap shot from the blue line, become a little bit more lethal from there. He's great at getting in the way. He kind of reminds me of a Jack Johnson type player from the NHL. Is always in the way, always finds a way to be there and disrupt the other team's offense. So his offense is something, and that's a big thing for this entire team, losing a lot of points from the departure of Alec Rawhauser. So a lot of these guys need to step up and become more of offensive threats. In the first two games against Adrian, obviously there's a Division III school, but that's one where they stepped up, ended up putting 11 pucks into the net over those two games. So that's very, very positive. And we're going to go on to the goaltender. It's going to be Eric Dopp. Mm-hmm. And I mean, as for any hockey team, they only go as far as their starting goaltender. So Eric Dopp is the number one impact player, I think, as most goalies are. His play dictates the success of this team. He was 19-11-3 last year, which is pretty good. His goal to allow average was only 2.37. I'd like to see that closer to the 2 mark, maybe below 2 just a little bit. And then he had a 9.02 or a .902 save percentage, which is pretty good for a starting goalie in a Division I program. So I'd like to see him maybe stop more pucks, get the goals allowed average every night down just a little bit, give the offense, who's going to probably struggle once they start playing tougher opponents, give them an opportunity to kind of get their feet underneath of them. So that's kind of where I'm at this season. I think this team is very good. They're currently 18th in the country, so I'm not the only one that thinks that they have a chance to make the tournament as they usually do. So those 3 guys, if they could step up, this team is going to be scary going into the WCHA season.
Yeah, from what I've seen from them so far, a lot of offense. Max Johnson, Connor Ford, Brandon Cruz. Those guys are really, really, really good players, veteran players. I mean, that's the big thing. Right. Is this team has a lot of experience. Eric Dopp in goal, very experienced. Timothy O'Charter's got a lot of playing time last year, and now he's going to be asked to step up into that role that Alec Rawhauser played last year on defense. So a lot of experience. I mean, that's the thing. I think that's the thing we can get most excited for this season for Bowling Green hockey. As always, I mean, they're going to be competitive in the WCHA, and like you said, have a chance to make the NCAA tournament come March. I mean, so the Falcons will get Robert Morris later tonight with the puck dropping at 7:07 p.m. And then they will play a home and away series with Mercyhurst on Saturday and Sunday. The Saturday contest is at home and starts at 1:30 p.m. The Sunday contest is away and is set to start at 3 p.m. You can listen to Ryan Vallon call all of those on 88.1 WBGU for Falcon hockey. Obviously, if you have a Flow Hockey subscription, they'll be on that as well. But now we're going to move into women's basketball real quick here before our time runs out. But the women's basketball got their season started off on Sunday with a win over Valparaiso. They won that game 70-60. And they just added a game this week. So they'll have 2 games coming up this week. First, they play against Northern Kentucky on Thursday at 12 p.m. And then they will travel back to the Stro for another 12 p.m. start on Sunday against Milwaukee. And the win against Valpo on Sunday, Lexi Fleming was huge for the Falcons as a freshman. She scored 24 points to lead all scorers, something that hasn't been done at Bowling Green since before 1970, and that's a very impressive feat considering the history of this program. And Hayden and Reese were actually both covering that game. Hayden was there. He covered it for BGSU. Reese covered it from home, but he did a nice recap for us at bgfalconmedia.com. So I'll give a couple of questions to both of them. Reese, what did Fleming do? Because I want to focus on her because just her kind of breakout game in the first game of her career. What did she do on Sunday that made her so effective?
Well, first and foremost, I think that Robin Freilich maybe didn't expect quite that kind of performance, but Lexi Fleming's been committed to BG for almost 2 years. So she's actually, about 2 years. So obviously Freilich made her a priority early in the recruiting process, even though I wouldn't say undersized, but she's not huge. She's not that big. So she's a little bit overlooked maybe by the more major schools, but She did a good job just facilitating, and you could tell every time she had the ball, Valparaiso was they were on their toes because they knew she can shoot the ball at any time. She took a bunch of threes. Not all of them fell, but like her efficiency was phenomenal. 7 of 13 from the field, hit every free throw. She didn't hit every free throw, but she was very effective efficiency wise, and that's something that Bowling Green really missed last year. And we saw their start. They were around 500 going into January. Then the wheels ultimately fell off, and it fell off pretty hard. But they really didn't have that go-to scorer last year, I think you could say. And having Lexi Fleming there now as at the point guard position, being able to create her own shot. If you need a bucket, she'll give it to you. I think that's going to really help them.
Yeah, I agree. I think Angela Perry, she was good last year on the inside, but they need a little bit more of a dynamic scorer. I think Perry averaged 13 a game last year. Katarian Thompson was there, but like you said, they didn't really have a dynamic scorer. And hopefully Lexi Fleming can be that. I mean, obviously, only one game. We'll see what happens the rest of the year and coming up this week and see what she can do. See if she can continue that. But exciting to see what we got from her on Sunday. And Hayden, now, I mean, this team has struggled the last 2 years. Robin Felix, this is her third year. She was brought in to kind of rebuild the program back up to what it was. I mean, it used to be a very, very, very good program here in the MAC. I mean, what do you think the potential for this team is? They have a lot of experience paired with a lot of freshmen. They have 7 freshmen on this team, but they still have so many players that have experience with Angela Perry, Katie Hempfling, Lisa Brett played last year as well. Gloniak. I mean, what kind of is their potential for this team in Freilic's third season?
There's where I see this team this year, especially with the emergence of Lexi Fleming, is kind of competing for somewhere in the middle of the MAC. But I do see the ability to be one of the better teams. The one thing that I saw on Sunday was that they the big thing that was a problem for them last year was they would have a lead going into the half, and then coming out of the half they would just be flat and never seem to just get back on their feet going. I saw a little bit of that this on Sunday where they came out of the half flat, but their defense was so strong that it also forced Valparaiso to come out flat. And with Lexi Fleming being as dynamic as she was on Sunday, really jump started the offense going into the fourth quarter, and they went on a I believe it was like a 12-0 run to start the fourth quarter. So I expect this team to be more competitive in the MAC this year, much more competitive, as long as they can continue to be that kind of dynamic force coming out of the half, because that was just their biggest issue last year. And with the amount of youth they have and how good the youth is, how much playing time they're getting, paired with the experience of Angela Perry, of Madison Parker, of Claire Gloniak, it kind of makes me feel like these younger players will mature much quicker onto the collegiate game, and this team, especially going into later this season and in the next season, could be one of the top MAC teams, or one of the top teams in the MAC.
All right, I agree. I think that this team has a lot of potential. Hopefully they can put that all onto the floor this season, and we will see. I mean, we'll get 2 more looks at them coming up here this week. But that will do it for this week's edition of the Swoop. It was a pleasure to have everyone on here to talk a little bit about Bowling Green athletics. If you want more Falcons athletic content, please head over to bgfalconmedia.com, where we will have you covered with game recaps for all of the games and games on slate for throughout this chaotic season, as well as some other fun stories too. So we thank you guys all for listening, and we will talk to you again next week on the Swoop.